Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. I think we'll wait for a few more minutes for some more people to join, and then we'll start our presentation. I think sometimes what happens is people download GoToWebinar image. It takes time, depending on the location, to download the entire thing and then start the webinar login and everything. So let's wait a few more minutes, then we'll start the conversation. Maybe a couple more minutes. For some people in India, it's very late as well. It's close to 10 o'clock. So it may be difficult for some of these guys from India and other places to join. We'll be mindful of the time frame and during the next webinar schedule. So in any case, let's start. I'll be sharing my screen. Hope you're able to see my screen here. So before going in, I am Govind Rangaswamy, CEO and founder of Appranix. Appranix is the site reliability automation company. We have been doing the site reliability automation for a few years now. As a team, we have created and sold a multi-cloud management company before. And personally, I have been with the cloud technologies since the 2001-2002 timeframe. And since then, it's leaps and bounds for the cloud native technologies like AWS and so on. So this particular session is all about application reliability on cloud native platforms like AWS or any other multi-cloud platforms. Before going into the presentation and the demo, a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar will be recorded. It's being recorded right now. So we'll post this webinar online, and also we'll send you the recorded webinar to your email. Please share the webinar details, if you could, on your social networks, Twitter and LinkedIn and so on. And to whoever is interested in knowing about achieving application high reliability on AWS and other multi-cloud platforms. So with that, what we will do is we'll start with the presentation. This presentation will take about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll go into a demo as well, just to give you an idea of how the entire product works in terms of creating the application reliability. So as I said, Appranix is all about delivering application reliability or resiliency. And that needs to be continuous because the environments on which the applications are running nowadays, the cloud platforms, are continually changing. So when you talk about application reliability or site reliability, or automating that site reliability requires continuous resilience. And we have been recognized by leading analysts like Enterprise Management Associates as one of the top 3 platforms for application-centric automation and management at scale, because anything to do with cloud platforms nowadays is scale and the dynamism. It's very, very key. And Appranix is a SaaS platform, enterprise SaaS platform, with 99.9% SLA. Of course, internally, we hold ourselves to be much more stringent about SLA. That's how we deliver 99.9 plus with the 24/7 support. So essentially, I would ask a very simple question: wherever I go and have a conversation with a potential customer and a partner, have you tested your application resiliency or reliability lately? By saying that application resiliency testing wise, right? Think about your typical data center style resiliency based on VM backups, infrastructure type of backup, and the recovery mechanism is currently grossly insufficient on public cloud platform, right? Now, after taking your application, either by lifting and shifting completely from your data center to AWS platforms or Google or Azure and so on, and then creating the infrastructure necessary using proper infrastructure as code, or directly running it just like your data center as a replacement, you run into other set of problems that you used to run into the same set of problems like data center, plus some more or sometimes less. Because you do have reliable data centers provided by these large service providers. But on the other hand, natural disasters have been on the rise. Floods and storms, extreme temperatures could also affect the data centers as well. Right? So the natural disasters have been increasing. So those are not going to decrease in terms of the requirement for protecting your applications properly. Second is the ransomware attacks. So think about the situation where just in 2018 alone, there have been like 53,000 security incidents and thousands of data breaches across many countries. And ransomware has been the top variety of malicious software found in 39% of these cases. And various types of data points here. But the key thing is, it's not about the malware attack or a ransomware attack, it's about the recovery. So you might spend X amount of dollars to pay the ransom. That's totally fine. But the time it takes to recover from the failure could cost much more, as specified, as explained in this report from Atlanta City, one of the ransomware attacks last year. They paid only $52K for the ransom, but it took people-wise, infrastructure-wise, resources-wise, $2.6 million to recover from that $52K ransomware scare. So, taking ransomware attacks in easy, nobody's taking it easy, but in the sense that it's about more than just paying the ransom. It's about the recovery, right? That's key. Third point is, when you move your applications to the cloud, we talk about one of the title of the this particular webinar is about achieving application reliability using cross-region protection and recovery, just like Netflix or companies like Netflix that are born in the cloud. that have been operating in the cloud for a very long time. If I'm not sure if you're aware, Netflix back in those days used to suffer from failures, and suddenly at the peak of prime time video session, the site would crash because AWS infrastructure had some issues in terms of storage and so on. So they created newer tools like Chaos Monkey and so on to test application reliability. For the organization that can afford to do setting up Chaos Monkey-like infrastructure, tools infrastructure, and testing it, and then making sure that applications are reliable is good, potentially possible if you could do it with your tools or your resources, and also changing your applications. But for the majority of the enterprises, it's very difficult to do. And we recognize that, right? For example, in this particular page, you could see how AWS recommends in terms of your application infrastructure configuration, right? So if you have an active configuration, that's great, but it's expensive. It's redundant. Most of the time, you not even use it. You could have a zone-wide availability as well. So you can use availability zones within the same region. That's one possibility. Of course, it is also complex, but you can also have cross-region availability if your business is so critical in terms of running on AWS. So the recommended configuration is like you could have a replication, active mirroring happening between two different regions. And look at all the configurations with respect to the network and so on. It's complex to manage. But you'll have to worry about these scenarios as well in terms of resiliency. Fourth is about downtime, not about lost revenue. It's like it's more than the lost revenue. It's one thing. Clearly, losing revenue is a big deal, right? It's depending on the size of the organization, depending on the type of application that you're running on AWS or other cloud platforms. And the loss of that application could create enormous loss for your business. On the other hand, it is more than the lost revenue. Productivity loss, customer confidence loss, damage to corporate reputation is at stake. Right? So having seen all these, different scenarios, there could be more scenarios that you might come across in your particular use case perspective. But in all these scenarios, have you tested your application reliability lately or resiliency lately? And that's where we come in. So Appranix Protect Service is a unique service built on top of our site reliability automation with application-centric and the cloud-native services in mind, which gives you a peace of mind, right? Most of the time, redundancy with respect to fault-tolerant architecture is very hard to achieve. So you might choose to have just a cross-region or cross-zone availability. It gives you the application reliability required from an application-centric perspective. Second is a recovery confidence. Unless you performed frequent and non-disruptive testing to ensure predictable recoveries, you cannot be sure that when an application goes down, you'll be able to recover. Third is, how long is the recovery time? Is it like 15 minutes or 1 hour or 4 hours? Some organization could tolerate 24 hours, right? But many nowadays, with instant gratification requirements, could only tolerate maybe 15 minutes, maybe less. You could stretch up to 4 hours, but typically it's about between 15 minutes to 4 hours in most of the organization for critical applications. And how do you actually do that unless you perform many times? And you'll have to think about the total cost of ownership of such a recovery scenario, not just at that particular point in time about the recovery, but also in terms of the infrastructure required for recovery, the amount of data that you'll have to keep in the other region in order for you to recover. Those are very important cost considerations as well. So given all that, you will have to look for a service that works for you. Currently, as far as we know, and based on the customer and partner feedback so far, there's not a single robust solution in the marketplace today. Right? Especially when you think about AWS native services with thousands of data points per application. When you talk about data points, an application running on AWS utilizes all kinds of infrastructure. EC2, right, to start with, EBS, elastic load balancers, all the network configurations, snapshots, object storage, all your basic imaging, everything put together, of course, combined with all the security necessary to run your application. So there are many, sometimes thousands of data points per application. So the current approach takes a very simple, there is no robust solution. There is a reason for it. So there's custom automation you could build. And you'll have to think about the snapshot lifecycle management. There are products in the market that do only the snapshot management. In fact, in AWS, you have some kind of a snapshot lifecycle management. But that's not about it. You have to think about some third-party backup products if necessary, right, if you're using it. And what's the effect of it? Is it going to be just a database protection or all the applications running in other virtual machines as well? Now you have to think about, doing it yourself or doing it, outsourcing it to AWS type, certified consultants. Then they are not going to be cheaper. All of that, if you combine all of that, can you guarantee your application recovery? So assuming that you have done this, you have done that once, twice, and then what happens is that you will have to think about managing the entire system. Now you have created an automation system that could potentially provide you with some kind of a reliability for some time, and then how do you maintain it? So you become kind of a system management group as well. So that's where we come in. We give you a full-blown recovery solution that is cross-region to provide the application reliability that your organizations demand. To start with, you could start, let's say, a region having an application or multiple applications running on EC2 infrastructure with all the storage, native, cloud native here. We are not talking about any third-party backup products or snapshot management capabilities. It's basically completely utilizing all the AWS native services available today to you. With a click of a button, you can sign up for more services, right? Assuming that you have Appranix SRA for all the capabilities, our service would do the cloud discovery of all the necessary cloud infrastructure instances of the services. We would take care of managing the snapshots based on your organization protection policies. Very configurable, flexible in terms of keeping a backup of your copies in the primary region as well as cross-region. Then we integrate with necessary services that will give us the dynamism that's available today. So you can continue to work on your production infrastructure. You can change the configuration of the cloud native infrastructure at will using your familiar tools on AWS, either through console, CLI, API, or third party. It doesn't matter at all. We would monitor the changes. We would continue to collect the information based on your changes. The reason is that at any point in time, you might need a recovery, or you might want to test the recovery. So we have, again, it's hosted as a SaaS service that's always available. We run it on, just like you are running on AWS, we are running on multiple clouds, AWS, Azure, as well as Google. So we kind of highly reliable in terms of managing that management infrastructure taken care of automatically. And then whenever you need the recovery scenario, assuming that all the snapshots are properly protected with the policies that you have specified in the protection policies, we would take care of managing the replication, monitoring the replication to make sure that all the snapshots from all the virtual machines, all your application configurations are properly copied as well. Then with a click of a button, literally, I will show you in the demo, you can pretty much recover all your infrastructure necessary around that application. Okay, you could be running any type of application for that matter. As long as we create and represent your application as a cloud assembly, we take care of whatever necessary to bring that application back, including all your network configurations, including your load balancers, including your Route 53 configurations, to make sure your external users have access to your application again in the second region. Because internally, we take care of using all kinds of machine learning algorithms and so on. But from your perspective, the user interface is very, very simple. And you can continue to use your existing tools and API and third party on your production side. So it's a unique service built for availability. And it gives you the entire set of services recreated in a second region based on your policies. So with that, what happens is that if you compare before and after Appranix, because your cloud infrastructure could continue to grow over a period of time, and applications might continue to grow. And the cost of managing your reliability of the application becomes really, really expensive for multiple reasons. Cloud infrastructure expensive, management expensive, and so on. With Appranix, we could help you to cut down that expense, but provide you with application reliability that's required. Right? And could say, is it about just application reliability? It is about application reliability. As a platform, this is about Appranix Protection Service. The platform overall supports multiple services. You could check out on our website. There are plenty of details in terms of what we do, including Appranix Deliver Service and optimization services that works both for traditional virtual machine-based infrastructures as well as Kubernetes-based container infrastructure as well. So with that, what we would do is that we would do a demo. And for that, you don't have to really kind of go through, downloading and installing the product and so on. You could start right from the AWS Marketplace, right? Please go to AWS Marketplace. You could search for Appranix or Site Reliability Automation or Backup and Recovery. You would find Appranix there. And what we are going to do is to simply click and go there. And this is where, if you signed into your account, I signed into my account here, you can sign into your account and you can continue to subscribe. Of course, I subscribe, so it will be like a resubscription. but it's as simple as subscribing here. Once you click that button, it would create an account in our platform. It will ask you a few questions in terms of what that account name, username, password, and so on, typical authentication requirements. Once you have it, you'll be prompted to configure your cloud. Where you can configure your cloud, let me refresh this. I may have to just log in again. All you have to do is to configure your cloud and give necessary information. And we also point to the necessary required IAM policies in terms of allowing us to discover your environment. It's all read-only. From production point of view, we do not change anything on the production side. So provide access keys, secret key, and so on. So I have already created such an account, so I'm not going to proceed to configure another one here. So let me cancel out of this place. And you can see a cloud configuration here. We discovered on the US East. So you could see the EC2 management console. Let me go to the East region. It's on the Ohio side. So you can see very minimal infrastructure, EC2 dashboard. Sorry, I think it is on the Virginia side. 3 running instances. One has WordPress. So WordPress runs like this. So the reason why I'm showing you WordPress is a very simple application that we will bring up again after the recovery on the other region, right? So you can see, you can pretty much run any blog, it's a typical blogging site. And you can see this particular one that was published kind of yesterday. So this particular application with a bunch of other ones running here. And you can see 17 security groups, bunch of snapshots, plenty of volumes, and elastic IPs, key pairs, network interfaces, many of them. So in order to bring your application up back again, including your tags, if you have to manage them, right, you will have to assemble all these services, all these instances of those services for your application. And that's where the complexity is. So what I'm going to show you, how you could configure and bring about the WordPress application on the Oregon side. And as you can see, there's 0 instances running. You can see a couple of snapshots that are already kind of as part of our organization policy. The snapshots are being copied and managed. And there are existing security groups. We'll create new ones and we'll reset this region back to what it is right now after the recovery as well. So let's go ahead and look at the region here. You can see, once you configure your cloud, it's based on the VPC. Everything is automatically grouped for you in terms of your applications. You can also group them when you create the assembly. You can also group them based on your applications as well. So you can see how WordPress, in terms of application configuration and the infrastructure configuration for WordPress, similarly in all other configurations are captured here. So now once you have it, it gives you an opportunity to create and represent your, let's say, production environment. We call it as production no-brainer. So let's go into the environment here to see how the rest of the configurations are. So you can see, when you create the cloud, you also need to provide the configuration for the cloud primary as well as the recovery region. I will show you in a moment. So the primary region has all these configurations with hourly backup and so on. And the details about the cloud services are automatically collected based on that infrastructure in production for that particular application called the particular cloud assembly. It's called demo assembly in this case. And the configuration of the cloud is also represented here. So primary versus recovery cloud. And the resources that are collected so far. So you can see all the compute, all the DHCP options, route table included, security groups, all of that required for this particular cloud assembly representing your application, and your primary snapshots and recovery snapshots as well. That you could initiate by specifying a policy. So in this particular case, what we have done is that we have specified an hourly policy where only backup frequency type could be anything. So let's create another policy so that you understand what it is. It could be a daily policy as well. So you could say daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and you could maintain the number of snapshots on the primary side and the number of snapshots required on the recovery region side. That's all you do, for all your applications. This is what is really required in terms of one-time specification based on your organization policy. Right? Once you did that, it automatically builds everything for you. Right? Every time, you could go back based on the retention, it will automatically clean up your snapshot. So nothing is left. It's just one policy that takes care of it. So let's take a look at the policy. Based on this policy, what was collected a few hours ago. So you can see the number of snapshots, EIPs, and so on. You could go back and look at the elastic IP at the time was just 2. There were no snapshots because snapshots are already cleaned up. And you can go to the latest one where you have the information about all the security groups, VPN connections. There are no VPN connections because we are going to directly access the WordPress and all the snapshots as well. So what we are going to do is to recover this particular point in time, the timeline. So let's go ahead and restore. Please be mindful of the infrastructure that will be created as part of this process in your recovery region, because you might be surprised to see the bill. So pay attention to that when you do the testing and so on. And of course, when as soon as the recovery is complete, as soon as you tested that your application is working fine, you could go ahead and click the reset button to clean up everything. And the system will automatically take care of cleaning up and bringing that environment, the infrastructure back to what it was. So let's go ahead and start the restore process. Here, once you start, I think there was some kind of a UI glitch here. So, the construction of that environment using the infrastructure as code comes up properly, and can see all the necessary network infrastructure will also be created. So let's keep an eye on the infrastructure that's getting created in the Oregon region. So if you go into the East EC2 dashboard again, so if you just refresh it, you'll see the infrastructure getting created automatically for you. So now there was 137 security groups. Now we have 151 security groups. And let's look at the instances are getting started. You can see the WordPress, a bunch of these instances that were automatically copied and created. All the snapshots have been automatically kind of adjusted as well in terms of attaching to the proper instances. All your tags or any other required infrastructure service instances will be automatically created for you, right? So that's a part of this entire recovery process. You don't have to really understand the entire, changing, service changes from AWS or newer services that are coming in, or instances that are coming in. I mean, one of the key things is that when you go and try to recover hundreds and hundreds of your instances in another region, especially during a disaster, be mindful that the instance types may not be available at the time. Exact instance types that you had in your production environment on the East Coast may not be available on the West Coast. So how would you ensure the application recovery? We take care of that particular problem as well, right? So all those simple nuances in terms of, or complex nuances in terms of how AWS really works in terms to bring up your application. And there are resource limitations in terms of how many snapshots you could do in parallel, or even how many API calls that you could make from your current perspective. Our service works around all those limitations as much as possible. We might sometimes come back and say, you may have to increase the limitation a little bit, constraints a little bit, by talking to your account manager from AWS. So this is, it's progressing. It's going to restart necessary ones. Okay. There is a failed instance, so automatically there is a reset that's happening. So we'll attempt the next one as well. Okay. So as you can see, the entire process is completely automated. Okay. Let's attempt one more time in terms of the recovery. So let the system clean up properly again, because there seems to be some issue in terms of what's getting created here. So we are going to initiate the cleanup. We'll wait for the cleanup to complete, and then we'll start the process again. We might have run into some issues with respect to resource limitation and so on. So let it complete. Once it completes, we'll start the recovery process again. Okay, so again, if there was a problem in terms of creating the resources, the system will automatically use AWS mechanism to kind of roll back the entire creation as well. That way, it will reset your environment back to what it was. It won't leave any traces in terms of dangling snapshots or dangling network configurations and so on. The system will automatically utilize AWS capabilities in terms of cleaning up as well. So in the backend, we manage the infrastructure as code. The system automatically creates and adjusts the infrastructure code on AWS, native infrastructure code for AWS. So let's a bit of a surprise here in terms of setting it back. So you could see if there was a problem, it will go back to the original state in terms of what it is. So that way you can cleanly restart the entire process again. So there was clearly an issue. So the system rolled back. You can see, in a nice way, it informed you. So what we will do is that we will go and restore this particular state. Let's restart this recovery back, 1 hour back in terms of recovery as well. Okay. Okay, so while this happens, if you have any questions, raise your hands. We'll appropriately answer them. We'll also send you a recorded version of this webinar anyway. So really appreciate any questions from anyone. Looks like it's pretty good. No questions. So we will record it once the recovery is complete, and we'll send it to you. And thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you dialing in to watch in terms of recreating the application as well. Thank you.